Welcome back to MVM. Today I'm excited to bring to you a brand new Civilization style game. It is a Euro game. It is a 4X game. One of my favorite styles of game. This is from Board&Dice. It's called Dark Ages, the Holy Roman Empire. And this is one of two games that can be combined together to make one massive area control game.
Yeah, I mean, it is already a massive game, as you can see. I don't even think we have all of this on the top-down camera, but there's a ton of stuff here. And the other really interesting thing about this, and we'll get into this in more detail, is at the end of the day, it is a massive point salad civilization game.
Right, so this brings a lot of the elements of Euro gaming that we love and mixes it with those hardcore 4X classic games of area control and conquest. All right, so I already mentioned it's called Dark Ages, the Holy Roman Empire. This is one of two games that you can combine together. The other one's called the Heritage of Charlemagne, which is the western side of Europe. This is the central portion of Europe, and it can be combined together to make a massive 8-player game if you so wish to do so. The main game is going to take roughly about 2 hours to play through with a longer teach. It's about a 30-minute teach because there's a lot of elements that go into this. We're going to cover just some of the portions. That's because we're going to have a supplement video that's going to go through the leaders and what they can do, as well as you can go over to Heavy Cardboard to see a full playthrough of the game. All right, so to start, each player is going to have a leader, and that leader is going to come with a territory that they will start in, along with 2 other cards that are going to basically give them a guide or a way in order to approach that victory condition for that leader. It's not exactly a victory condition, but it is going to guide you in the way that you may want to play that particular character.
Yeah, and it's really cool too because these leaders are historically based, as are these starting cards, and basically the theme wrapped around the strategies that you might want to use with this leader. I'm using Bertrand II, and I start with Teutonic Knights and War Machine. Now, these cards start in my hand. I still need to get them played, but these are going to be things that help develop my civilization as I move forward.
Each of these leaders is going to tell you where on the map you will start. You're going to look at the map and you're going to notice a number of different provinces. These are the smaller regions that encompass a larger region. That's because you want to control regions to gain victory points throughout the game. Each of these individual provinces, though, is going to have a space for 2 farms. It's going to tell you what kind of resource that area produces, and there's 4 resources in the game that you will be collecting and utilizing through the game. You're going to start with a base city along with the basic type of building that that area is known for, plus 2 of the different military units. There's 3 different military units in the game. They can all be upgraded just like any good Civ game. You have your basic infantry, you have your archers, and then you have your cavalry.
Now, a lot of what Jeremy just mentioned has to do with the map and that sort of traditional conquest aspect of a game like this. But like we said, this is a point salad, and there are some other ways to go about getting your points. You're still going to need to do some stuff on the map, believe me, but you've also got these cultures right here, and this kind of effectively takes the place of upgrading and new technologies throughout history with your civilization.
Right, that's because there is a culture track that you will move up through the course of the game. This culture track, just like everything else in this game, is going to give you victory points depending upon how high you climb. But it's also going to unlock the ability to gather these culture cards through the course of the game. The further up you go, the more cards that you can possibly collect during your turn. Each of these culture cards are made up of a number of different types of cards. You have cards that you can play the moment that you build churches. There's cards that are going to upgrade through 3 different levels that give you all kinds of different abilities to the game. There's cards that are going to upgrade your infantry. And there's even buildings, just like Wonders of the World, but Wonders in Europe, that you're able to build to give you unique powers through the course of the game.
Yeah, the most significant of those are probably the military units that you might find, as well as the civil technologies that you're going to be placing across the top of your board. The way those civil technologies work is you're going to use an action to get them played, but then throughout the game you're going to spend resources or money to actually upgrade those and make them worth a significant amount of points.
That's because each civil card is going to have 3 different levels that you're going to unlock, giving you additional abilities or new abilities as you unlock them. At the top of the board is going to be the actions. This game is all about action selection, using your nobles to go to these various spaces on the board. These are represented by 5 cards that are randomly distributed at the start of the game. They're always the same 5 cards, but they're in a different configuration each game that you play. In a 4-player game, each player is going to have 4 of these noble discs. On your turn, you're basically taking one of these noble discs and selecting one of the actions below one of these cards. These are all going to give you abilities that allow you to manipulate the game board, to bring new technologies into play, to get new technologies, and so forth.
Yeah, we'll briefly talk about all of the actions you can take here. Like we said, we're not going to go into a great amount of detail, but we do want to highlight some of these, and this is probably one of the more unique aspects of this game. The first one I want to talk about is maneuvering right here over at the end. Now, maneuvering in this game is interesting. You are going to be using this action to maneuver or move your units around the board, but it's tied very much to your farms and how much food you're producing. You have to actually go through this fairly detailed sequence before you maneuver, where you're checking your farms, checking how many units you can maneuver, and then either giving up some of those units because you can't support them, or taking care of them before the maneuver.
And that's done by paying gold from your supply. So there is this balance that you have to maintain through the course of the game. Next one is to research. But before we talk about research, let's talk about what you are researching. That's done with the development of culture cards. This is when you're able to collect culture cards or use the ones that you previously start with in the game. Collecting a culture card is done to the left of wherever your culture marker is. So if I am the purple player, the only ones I can collect are these two. But as I progress down the board, it opens up more cards. So the higher up in culture, the more points you get, but also the more cards that you can recruit. Going to this space here is simply going to allow you to take any one of the cards that you have access to and put it into your hand. This does not allow you to play it immediately. However, the research does.
Yeah, researching, like Jeremy mentioned earlier, is going to be what you do after you have some culture cards in your hand. This is going to allow you to either play one of those cards down or spend some money to advance or upgrade some of the cards you already have. Either those civil technologies I mentioned earlier, or playing a military card on top of ones that you already have.
The last two spots are recruit and building. Recruiting is simply going to allow you to bring new units into places where you have cities. Each player is going to start with a city on the map, and you're going to pay whatever resources are on your player board according to the unit that you want to bring into play. Now note, as you progress through the game and upgrade your units, higher level units are going to cost more resources. You have to pay attention to that. However, the moment that you do upgrade them, all of your units on the board are going to upgrade at the same time. The final thing is to build a city or a building into the areas that you control. This is extremely important. This is how you do the 4X portion of expanding in the game. You're going to be able to build buildings in locations where you have those cities. Those come in the form of different types of workshops and marketplaces according to the area that you control. Remember, there's 4 different types of buildings in the game, all producing unique resources. The more of them that you have in a particular region or province, the more resources you produce. The more you disperse, the more different types you get, but you don't produce as many. You also have the ability to build a lot of other things in the game. You have churches that you can build, you have new cities you can build, and the most important thing that you'll find out very quickly are the keeps. This game has combat, just like any 4X game. However, this is a game not about expanding and doing combat all the time. It's about shoring up, building shells around your defensive formations, and using those keeps to be able to invigorate your soldiers around you. Each of the different areas is allowed to build a stack of up to 3 keeps. These are going to allow you to manipulate the dice in the game. This is the main way to get higher rolls for all of your dice rolls in the game. Plus, it allows you to build really good defenses in the game. This game is about, again, about taking areas and then controlling them and not letting people into them.
Yeah, it really is strategic as well, because you're going to build these cities in the territories you control, but you may not necessarily build keeps all the way up in every single one of them. You're not going to be able to do that, first of all, because it takes a lot of resources. But once you do, it's going to affect all the regions around it. So when you're trying to mitigate your dice in areas around that keep, you're going to be able to do that and basically have a situation where you're rolling dice, yes, but it's not completely luck-based.
Now, one of the things we have to mention about this game, we already mentioned about the 5 different actions, but how do you take them? You simply place your disc in that area. This is a game where people are going to be at different phases of the game at different times because you have 4 of these nobles. However, you could run out before another player, or you could choose not to place them and pass. Passing works by taking all of your discs back and then reusing them on future turns. There's something else that also happens. When there are 3 of these nobles stacked in the same location, the bottom one will slide down into one of these bonus actions. That means that you always have actions to take as long as you remain in play. So for instance, if David were to put more on here, or I, or a combination of other players, and this is the 3rd one on the bottom, I could slide it into one of these 2 locations, taking the actions on the bottom. Those are typically allowing you to regroup or to recruit or to gain resources at any given time.
Yeah, and what's interesting about these actions, like we said at the beginning, the main actions are assorted in a different way every time you play the game. So a lot of these main actions in one game are going to be associated with secondary actions differently in another game.
The game is going to keep going around the table until one of 4 in-game conditions are met. Number 1, if all of the churches are built, that will trigger the end game. Number 2, if one player reaches the end of the culture track, that will trigger the end game. The final 2 is if one player has all 4 of their culture or tech cards built up to level 3, that will signify the end of the game, or if all the cities are built. And then you're going to finish that round and then have one more round. Now, as we mentioned, this is a point salad 4X game. There's a lot of different ways to score points.
Yeah, those points are scored by a lot of those different endgame conditions. Jeremy might be conquesting the map while I might be focusing on upgrading my civil technologies. And you can easily score similar amounts of points in those different areas. It all comes down to who balances it the best and does what they need to do to come out on top.
And there's a whole other slew of things that we didn't mention. There's a warehouse because you can sell your goods, but you can only hold so many from round to round, so you have to balance your economy throughout the game. There's barbarian tokens, so there's locations where you want to expand into, but maybe you have to fight some barbarians along the way as well. And again, you have combat in the game. Combat is very simple. You're rolling dice, you're using the combined strength of your forces, your battle dice, and all the different keeps you have around you. It's simple, it's fast, and it's easy to get through.
Yeah, and best of all, that dice rolling doesn't really feel like a traditional dice chucker because you can do so much on the map to make it feel like you have some agency over what you're trying to do on that conquest.
I really, really like this game. And again, we don't try to get into a review for these style of games, but I've played this game twice. I love Sid Meier's Civilization. I love these heavy Civ games. And what this game does for me is it brings points into a game that's typically won with one winner at the table. This game will traditionally end in one of those 4 different ways. However, everyone still has a shot of winning, depending upon the different techs you've built, the way you've built out your empire, maybe even the keeps that are having surrounded areas. So you may be able to expand into a really large area that you control and still be able to win the game by never doing conquest at all.
Yeah, one player might feel like they're absolutely dominating the game because they're laser focused on their strategy of potentially conquesting the map. But you can't do everything in this game. You are not going to dominate the map and have 4 cards leveled up all the way. So you really got to pay attention to where everyone else at the table is getting their points.
This is called Dark Age Holy Roman Empire. Remember, there's going to be 2 versions of this game, a Central Europe and a Western Europe, that can be combined into a massive 8-player game. If you have any questions about it, make them in the comments below. Make sure you come back to see our leaders walkthrough of all 7 of the base leaders, and we will catch you guys next time.
Bye-bye.